Hello, everybody. I'm Mark Hyatt. You might know me from KUSF in San Francisco, music distribution, and a number of places. But it's not really about me. I'm just lucky enough to be talking to an industry heavyweight and also a dear friend. I have today the CEO, president, and owner of Sound City Studios in Van Nuys. Her name is Sandy Skeeter, and I want to thank you, Sandy, for being here today. How you doing?
I'm happy to be here talking to you.
Sandy, I was hoping, we could, I know a little bit, but one of the things that's great about this opportunity is to find out a little bit about the history of you and Sound City. And so when did you open your doors?
The studio started as a Vox amplifier showroom because the Vox headquarters was nearby.
Hmm.
And they built it and it was in the Thomas Organ days that they had the license to for Vox. So it wasn't the good amplifier days. But they built the studio and pretty soon declared themselves open for business as a recording studio in 1968. Soon after, maybe 6 months, there was a notice in Billboard or one of these things where this other guy was taking over the studio. And so instead of being Vox Studios, he's changing the name to Sound City. And that lasted less than a year also. It was incorporated in 1969, and then my dad came in 1970 and bought the business and gave 49% to Jonas Gottfried, who was operating it. Jonas really knew the business of finding talent, nurturing talent, managing talent, and so my dad was just more of a businessman. So he couldn't have done it without Joe. So he made him, he made him his partner.
Do you remember the first time that you set foot in the studio?
I don't know if this was the first time, but in the 70s, when Evel Knievel was doing his Snake River jump, they invited my 5th grade class to come and to the studio and record questions and answers with Evel.
That is wild.
So in the daytime, it was the kids asking the questions. And then in the evening, they had a adult party with adult beverages, and during the day we had hot dogs and popcorn or whatever. So maybe going in and actually to a recording session, that would be 1972, I'm gonna say. It's excitement. Like if you ever go, the first time you go to a TV studio or radio station or whatever, it was exciting. Yeah.
And what did you know about the recording industry?
At the time?
Yeah, with that general, let's say, adolescence period.
Well, I didn't know anything about the recording business. My dad sort of kept the family away from it because it's a den of iniquity. So my mom was a straight ahead, dedicated junior high school teacher, and kept her away too. And I don't know if you've seen the Sound City movie when he tells Dave Grohl that he bought the Neve console, and it was more than twice as much as his house, and his wife didn't know. That would be my mom not knowing. So yeah, I didn't know too much about it. And he kind of kept it separate, I think. Sound City was always known as a place that was super artist friendly and artist nurturing. And that was because of Jonas Gottfried, because that's my dad's partner, who would have given you the shirt off his back. And he did everything for the artist. And he knew that there was a lot of talent, and he was looking for talent. And at some point, they realized that you don't make any money as a recording studio. It's like a hotel where you can only sell 24 hours a day, 365. And if you're working 24/7, 365, your costs are astronomical because there's, the maintenance engineer, which is the guy who fixes the tape machine, has to be sleeping in the back on the couch because if you've got sessions 24 hours, you've got tape machines and they go down and the customer's paying and you have to wheel in another expensive tape machine. So it's like a hotel, and if you're booked, then you have to provide a lot more service. And so they realized that this was the concept of owning content. They knew that you had to either produce the music and get the person a record deal, or own publishing, or manage the band or the singer or the artist and get a piece of it there. So pretty quickly they started putting artists in the studio on speculation, and they started that business model, which is, hey guys, we hear you're a really good band, Clover, and we're gonna put you in the studio and do something on spec or whatever. And then those guys went on to be Huey Lewis and the News and Doobie Brothers band, and the band for Elvis Costello for his first album. So they just really tried to find talent and nurture them and give them a place to call home. And
I think so. Did you have any peers kids of studio owners or kids of engineers that you knew growing up, or kids whose parents were working at any of the major labels or things like that? Or did you this was entirely your world, the Sound City nurturing world?
um well, I grew up in Los Angeles near North Hollywood, Studio City, so there's a lot of people in the industry. There's a lot, like, I was in orchestra and band with a guy named Keith Cooper, who's my attorney, and his at the time we were in junior high. I Somebody made in woodshop a print of the Bachman Turner Overdrive logo, and I said, "Oh, that they recorded at my dad's studio." And Keith said, "So what?" or whatever, and I didn't realize where that was coming from. And then just come to find out, his dad was the president of the Grammy NARS.
Amaris?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jay Cooper,
Yeah.
he's in
Yeah.
his
Yeah.
90s and he's still working in the music
Yeah.
industry. So
Yeah.
so anyway, Keith and I go way back. So there's a lot of people in the music business. So and
Sure.
then so people are pretty blasé, I think.
Okay. So that's a great thumbnail sketch, and hopefully we'll be able to come back and get some more juicy details. But where's Sound City today? And to me, it's like a glimmering sanctuary on top of the hill, because when I was out there visiting you, it was couldn't get a parking spot, and
True.
I'll drop some names. There was Phoebe Bridges wandering around. I mean, it's so. What's going on in Sound City today, and how do you connect the two, just in your mind? Hey, you go to sleep going, God, we're full. Why?
Well, for a long time, my dad kept the studio going, even though it was not a moneymaker. And he could do that because 30 or 40 years ago, the guy who owned the industrial property where it's located passed away, and his nieces and nephews didn't want a crummy industrial complex in Van Nuys. And so my dad sort of had to buy it because his business was located there. And so many of our most important strategic moves were just made out of necessity. Or my dad buying the Neve console and then hanging on to it because he was thrifty. He bought a Rolls Royce. Gosh darn it. And I'm not giving that up, So my dad buys the property, and so he can prop it up, keep it going. And he knew that it was the honey that brought the flies, or and he also knew that we have a lot of recorded content that we could someday monetize and take advantage of. And so after I lost my job in sales at a small label, I just said, well, I know how to put things out. And so I started putting out collectible titles of, like, Clover, what, as I mentioned before, which, the members went on to great things. Things that are, collectible. They'd sell 1,000 or 2,000, a small number of units. And so my dad kept it going, kept the brand going, kept Sound City going, even though he had to put money in every year to cover it, and and one day I was just doing projects with my dad, thinking about the content. One day I looked over his shoulder at the spreadsheet and for Sound City Center, and I said, "Holy crap, that's what this place does!" And he said, "Well, that's what it does if people paid their rent." And I said, I'm in the landlord business. Screw the record business. I'm in the landlord business. So then I started getting better tenants, and come to find out that, like, A&M Studios, which is Henson, and the Village, had private rooms on site where people like John Mayer could have a room, and it props up the commercial recording studio that's open for business, like a hotel. So I said, well, I need to do that. I need to get people on the property who are our customers. And so we just started getting the other nooks and crannies. People started building out studios, and so we got people on the property who have mixing and mastering studios. They built them. And so to this day, that's really been a godsend, because now we have Matt Chamberlain, who's a famous professional drummer here. We have Eric's Guitars, who is the guy who services your guitar and fixes it. And then I've got all these different people in studios making music. And I started getting great tenants, and it really was amazing. And so at some point my dad said, let's just rent Sound City, because we don't make any money. And we were still getting bookings, but it had a full staff and manager and runners and assistant engineers, and you have to keep those people busy. And if you don't have enough work, it's terrible. And we get a session for a week to do the drums for the band Train. And the guy says, well, we've already recorded the whole album, but this is the single and we want it to sound good. So we got a week. We got a week so that the single, which is famous, these famous songs that are used in commercials. So we got a week of Train, or they just did their drums. So instead of getting REO Speedwagon for 3 months, you get 1 week. I don't know. It's just not, those days are gone. So my dad said, let's just rent Sound City. So as soon as we got a realtor to rent, it was rented in the day. Somebody wanted it. So then, there we are as the landlord. It's in the black immediately, and everyone knows the story of the Sound City movie, where we sold the Neve console to Dave Grohl, because the tenant that we signed an agreement with had a board that was an EMI console from Abbey Road that did Star Wars or whatever. He had a console he loved, and he loved the Neve, but he just said, look, I'm going to be leasing this place for 10 years or whatever. I have my own console. So we had already gotten the message from recording engineer producer James Brown, hey, Dave Grohl wants you to know, if you ever want to sell the Neve, he wants it. So we called I called Rick Rubin and Brett Gerwitz and Dave Grohl, and just Dave wanted it the most, and it sort of was the most meaningful, because he said, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for this recording console. So
maybe just for people who don't know, what do you mean he wouldn't be here? Why was he so attached to it?
Well, because they came into the studio and they made Nirvana Nevermind in 1990.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's that.
So
They sold a couple of copies.
So everyone thinks, the way they portrayed it in the Sound City movie was fire sale. Sound City's going out of business. They're selling everything. I'm like, no, No. We changed the business model. We became we leased the studio out to two producers. They are business partners, and there's one camped out in Studio B and one camped out in Studio A, and they worry about getting business. They whatever project they get, they get from a record label, they bring it to their studio. So they just pay a monthly fee. So it's better for everyone. All it's
Yeah,
cheaper for them, and it's better for me. So I don't
yeah.
have to have a staff, and I don't know if anyone's familiar with California um, law, but we have horrible workman's comp laws and all that. You know, not we people need workman's comp, but it's really hard to do business in California. So I think in the last few years we've been looking for business partners to maximize the brand. After Dave Grohl spent a lot of money and time making the movie about Sound City, all of a sudden there was a consciousness about the fact that the recording studios actually contribute to the project. The sound of it, the sound of the room, the sound of the equipment. Now people are like, wow, what microphones do you use? You know, I mean, people are interested now. And I think it went really far for other studios as well, to make the studio much more famous. I mean, it was a sort of a hidden gem. We got a local award from there's a Valley Industry and Commerce Association, which is sort of like a group of business people, and they try to work with local and state governments to help businesses survive in the San Fernando Valley. And they gave us an award, and they had gone to the Sundance Festival and seen the Sound City movie, and they're like, this is in our backyard. We're in Van Nuys. We didn't know about Sound City. So it's not you kind of always wanted to be under the radar. You didn't want people just waltzing into the studio and say, hey, is Tom Petty here? You know, that kind of thing. So it was a different time. Now, you know, it was a different time, but now the studio is a lot more, I think it's more famous than it used to be, and people actually care.
To me, there's something magical about having access to ephemera or
Right.
actual artifacts that are associated with places that some of the most memorable pieces of art in the 20th century have been created. And so maybe you could tell us, am I being overly dramatic? Or, I mean, I don't think so, or I don't think we'd be talking if I was being overly dramatic.
No, you're not being dramatic. When the Sound City movie came out, and Mr. Dave Grohl wore the Sound City t-shirt that I gave him, all of a sudden, you know, we were selling thousands and thousands of t-shirts all over the world to fans. So I knew people wanted a piece of the studio. And even today, sometimes people drop by and we'll give them a little piece of like a 2-inch tape or something. And they're like, oh my God, I've got a piece of tape from Sound City. You know, so yes, we want to make the studio available to people. I mean, the plugin makes it available to people so that if they're in Greenland and they're in a rock band, they can record it at Sound City. And yeah, let's why not? There's magic here, and why not share it with people all over the world?
Okay, so basically, when I called you up and I said, "Hey, I want to talk to you about this idea," and because our model at Retroactive is one of artist first, and it seems as though that's your history,
Yeah.
and what you're doing now is artist first, and so you must have believed me, or at least said, "I'll trust but verify." So do you see this partnership? Well, I know we're all hoping this partnership is successful and wonderful and things like that, but I see that this is just the beginning of how Sound City as a brand can come into more people's homes and have a positive effect. Whether
Yeah.
it's you look over or like in the old, in the old days, you rub something, you go for good luck. I kind of feel that's where we're at.
Yeah.
What do you
Well,
think
I
about
mean,
that?
the approach for Retroactive of engaging directly with the consumer, with the artist or the intellectual property directly to the consumer really appealed to me. And you don't need all this, intermediaries anymore. Come on, let's just, our customers are right here. And I like the idea and the opportunity of the production value, which founder Martin has so much experience producing episodes like this, taking Willie Nelson directly to the consumer, or Crosby, Stills and Nash, or the Jerry Garcia estate. So so it's professional production meeting the consumer. So yeah, this is a no-brainer.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, I really enjoyed talking with you today, Sandy. Actually, I enjoy talking with you all the time, but having us record our conversation has been thrilling. And so, great. I'm looking forward to the Sound City collection coming out. I think it's going to be fantastic, and I think everybody's going to be happy. And perhaps, besides your real estate speculation in the business you have, you'll now have a merchandise business that you can go, oh wow, that's in the black.
Sounds great.
All right.